Every once in a while, someone gets a feeling they just can't explain. Some say it's just fear or nerves, but no, it's something deeper and darker. Often these feelings are brushed off, taken no notice of. But what if it's not just a feeling? What if that person is actually having a real premonition about a disaster that's about to happen? Premonitions are often thought of as nonsense by many, but some have been proved to be real. There are actually things out there beyond our understanding. Here are 5 terrifying premonitions that came true. On the night of November the 5th, 1967, the 9:43 express train from Hastings to Charing Cross left the coastal town with over 300 passengers on board. It was a quiet Sunday ride as the tired travellers were heading back to the city after a weekend at the seaside. Most were trying to sleep or sat back reading the newspaper or just watching out of the window into the dark night. A few days earlier, a man named Alan Hencher, a communications officer from Lancashire, had been losing sleep over something he couldn't explain. Alan had been called strange in the past and was known for having premonitions, and according to his friends, sometimes they came true. He called into the Premonitions Bureau, a small research project founded by psychiatrist Dr. John Barker, who had been studying people who said they could sense disasters before they happened. In late October, Alan phoned Dr. Barker in a panic. He said he had seen vivid flashes of a train derailment somewhere in southern England, a major crash that would leave 49 people dead. He couldn't say when or where, only that he felt it was going to happen very soon. Dr. Barker had been studying similar reports since the Aberfan mining disaster just the year before. That disaster involved a massive coal waste tip, basically a mountain of coal debris that collapsed after heavy rain, creating an avalanche of sludge down the hillside. It buried a school and several houses, killing 144 people, with 16 of them being children. In the days leading up to it, something strange happened. Hundreds of people across the UK, including children, reported having premonitions about a dark wave or a school being buried. One 10-year-old girl, Errol Jones, told her mother she had a dream that her classroom disappeared under something black. Errol was one of the first victims. So Dr. Barker logged Alan Hencher's call, but there was nothing he could do. He couldn't prove it. All he had to go on was a voice on the other end of the phone describing something that he felt in his bones. Then, less than a week later, it happened. At 9:16 p.m, just outside Hither Green Station in South London, the express train hit a broken rail at around 70 miles per hour. The first 10 carriages jackknifed off the track. Passengers were thrown against metal and glass. Some were trapped under the wreckage. Others crawled off into the night, working their way around twisted steel and through smoke. When the rescue crews arrived, the scene was chaotic. Firefighters cutting through train coaches, locals bringing blankets, the injured screaming out for help in the dark. 49 people were killed and 78 were badly injured, making it one of the worst peacetime rail disasters in British history. No one could have known what was coming, except apparently for Alan Hencher. He continued reporting his premonitions to the Bureau for several years, but nothing ever matched the accuracy or the emotional toll of Hither Green. He said afterwards that the visions never felt like insight, only like the feeling of dread that refused to go away. It's easy to dismiss stories like this as just coincidence or just a lucky guess, but the details make it harder to ignore. The exact number, the timing, and the specific kind of event, whether it was intuition, a subconscious connection, or something we don't yet understand, it raises an unsettling question. If someone tells you they have seen a tragedy before it happens, what do you do? On March 10, 2019, Carol Karanja arrived at Bole International Airport with her mother Anne and her 3 children, Ryan, Kelly and Ruby. They were flying to Nairobi to continue a trip to Canada. It looked like a normal family travel day, except it wasn't. A week before the flight, Carol had told her father she had a bad feeling. She wasn't nervous exactly, which her dad thought might be the matter. She said her heart wasn't happy about the trip, and she felt there was something wrong, but she still went. The plane the family boarded was Ethiopian Flight 302. The plane, a Boeing 737. Takeoff was 8:38 a.m. local time, and there were 157 people on board. Within minutes after takeoff, a radio call showed the crew fighting against the aircraft. Witnesses on board reported a climb, then a drop, then another climb. There was nothing they could do. At 8:44 a.m., the jet went down near Bishaftu. There was not one single survivor. News reached Nairobi, and in the chaos before the whole story could be pieced together, Carol's father tried her phone. There was no answer, and his stomach sank. He told reporters what his daughter had told him, that she didn't want to fly that day. He said that Carol had mentioned it several times, but, like many of us would, she pushed on through. Unfortunately, it wasn't until after the fact that her father realized what she was referring to. Perhaps Carol felt it so strongly because it wasn't just about her. The family lost 5 people in one morning: a daughter, a mother, and 3 children. As to how she knew, well, maybe this wasn't exactly a random event. In the weeks that followed, investigators sifted through the records and followed a chain that had already happened a few months earlier. On October of 2018, just 5 months earlier, Lion Air 610, another Boeing 737, crashed in Indonesia minutes after takeoff. So same exact thing. The common link was MCAS, an anti-stall software which would push the nose of the plane down if a single sensor misread the angle of the plane. Pilots would pull back and the system would push again. That cycle showed up in the data of both of these crashes, so a faulty computer was to blame. Of course, none of that was known to Carol. All she knew was she had a feeling she couldn't explain. The recovery of the site took days, and personal items turned up in the debris fields. Clothes, documents, pieces of passport. Identification relied on DNA mainly. The names were read out country by country. It was Kenya that lost most of the citizens. The Karanja family was called more than once. This plane model was grounded worldwide after this, and Boeing faced criminal charges and huge settlements. Manuals were rewritten, and the plane returned to service after changes and certification flights. The part that doesn't fit is a message Carol shared in a conversation she had before they left. My heart isn't really excited. I feel like there's something bad ahead, but I don't know what. Her family remember those words because of how the morning ended. Some say it's not proof of anything paranormal. It's just a record of what was said, who she said it to, and what happened next. On June 3rd, 2017, just after 10 p.m, central London was as busy as it always is on a Saturday night. Among the crowds of people wandering round were 2 tourists from France, Christine Delcrosse and her partner Xavier Thomas, both 45 years old. They had spent the day sightseeing and were now heading towards London Bridge to check out the view at night. Minutes before they reached it, Christine stopped, looked at Xavier and said she suddenly felt like she no longer wanted to go. They had had a very good day, and she wasn't feeling tired or ill. It was something deeper than that, a bad feeling that she just couldn't shake off. She suggested they turn back or took another route, but Xavier put his arm around her and told her not to worry as it's safe. It was late, but there were plenty of people still around, and that helped. At 10:09, a white Renault van rented earlier that day accelerated onto London Bridge and jumped onto the pavement. It was a deliberate action and was so fast no one had time to react, and the van ran through an entire crowd of people. Christine remembered the sound of the engine first, the high-pitched sound of it revving up, then the angle of the headlights coming off the road and onto the bodies ahead. The van hit her and Xavier from behind, throwing her across the pavement. She was knocked unconscious and woke up to chaos and bright lights. Her left leg was broken and she had pelvic fractures, facial injuries and bruises everywhere. First responders around her were trying to create some order. It was so difficult for them, as there were people running round, screaming and crying. There were people rushing away from the scene, while others rushing towards it to help. The attackers had abandoned the van and were running on foot towards Borough Market, armed with knives and fake explosives. The driver and the two passengers would soon be caught. Kareem Butt, Rashid Radoun and Yosef Zagbra were shot down, but by then 8 innocent people had been killed and dozens injured. As for Xavier, well, he was missing. For days, marine units searched the River Thames, but the current below runs so fast, anything that hits it will run downstream with some speed. Then, on June the 7th, a body was found at Limehouse, several miles from the bridge. The dental records confirmed what Christine already knew. Her partner had been thrown over the side of the bridge on impact. In the aftermath, while the UK launched multiple investigations that went on for years, something else was starting to emerge at the Old Bailey inquest 2 years after the attack. At the inquest, Christine testified about the minutes leading up to the attack. She told the inquest that she had a premonition that something bad was about to happen and she didn't want to go onto the bridge. She asked to turn back, but they didn't, and within minutes the van had hit them. Many people have claimed to have had these premonitions, but obviously they are impossible to prove. This one was different though. It wasn't said online or in a blog post, but in a courtroom. When Christine spoke at the inquest, she did try to explain the feeling she had, what she said to Xavier, and what happened next. She wasn't trying to prove anything. The attack happened and the criminals were caught. There's no big lesson here, only to trust your intuition. On that June evening, Christine Dale Cross knew something, tried to turn away from it, but just couldn't. People in Point Pleasant don't talk about Mothman like he's a creature. They talk about him like a warning. Sightings of him began to grow in 1966. Same wings, same red eyes. A year later, the Silver Bridge collapsed, taking multiple lives. After that night, reports of Mothman stopped, at least in that part of the world. What many don't realise is sightings of this creature are seen across the world. Claims of a black-winged creature were seen flying across Chernobyl in 1986. Another report is tied to the I-West 35 bridge in 2007. Of course, there's no proof that any of it was the same thing, but once you see the connections, it's hard to ignore them. The first report came from 2 young couples driving near an old T&T store in the north of town. Steve, Linda, Roger and Mary. It was late, around 11:30 p.m. on November the 15th, when their headlights lit up a figure standing in the road. They said it was around 6 or 7 feet tall, grey in colour, with huge wings. Its eyes glowed red, and when they swerved around it and sped up, it followed. They described it as gliding, not flapping its wings. It kept up pace with their car, driving at over 100 miles an hour before vanishing into the trees just outside of town. The following day, the Mount Pleasant Register ran the story with a headline that would stick for decades. Couples see man-sized bird creature. From there, the sightings multiplied. Dozens of residents say they saw it too, perched on rooftops and rising from the tree line and chasing cars. Some said it made a sound like a high-pitched hum. Others said it appeared before moments of panic, car crashes, power failures, sudden deaths in town. People started calling it the Mothman, and somewhere along the line, the story stopped sounding like a monster tale, but more of a warning. On December 16, 1967, at 5:04 p.m., Rush hour traffic was crossing the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant, Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio. The temperature was just about freezing, and it was very busy. The bridge shook under the weight like it always did. Then a single chain link in the suspension snapped. Witnesses said it sounded like a gunshot, and within minutes the bridge folded in on itself and landed in the river. 46 people died and 2 bodies were never found. It was one of the worst bridge disasters in US history at the time. Engineers later confirmed the cause was a small crack no more than 1/10 of an inch deep. It was a mechanical flaw that went unseen for more than 40 years. For locals, it was something beyond that, because in the days before the collapse, people reported seeing the creature again circling the bridge and perched on its frame. Strangest of all, after the disaster, the sighting stopped completely, as if it had done what it needed to do, then left. That was enough for some to believe that maybe it didn't cause the tragedy, maybe it was foretelling it. Then the pattern seemed to repeat. In 1986, people in Chernobyl, Ukraine, reported seeing a large black bird with red eyes flying over the nuclear plant days before the explosion. In 1999, reports of the creature came from Moscow before a large building collapsed. In 2007, just before the I-West 35 bridge collapse in Minnesota that killed 13 people, witnesses say they saw a large winged creature on the riverbank. There has never been proof, of course, no photos, just a strange timeline that keeps looping back. Sightings followed by fear, followed by some large-scale disaster. In Point Pleasant, they built a statue of it in the middle of the town, and every November they hold a festival in its name. It's part folklore and part history. Was this some sort of mass hysteria or just a coincidence? But what if it was something else? What if the Mothman is some sort of prophet, arriving in places as a warning of disasters to come? But, as with most omens, we only truly understand them after it's too late. You should always listen to your intuition, but most people don't because it's a feeling they don't understand. So usually explain it away as anxiety or imagination. But in early 1975, one city in China actually did listen, and it saved over 100,000 lives. The story begins in Haichang, a coal mining city in northeast China, not far from the Korean border. The winter had been brutal that year, and snow was piled high on rooftops, and the streets were frozen solid. But beneath all that ice, something was changing. For a while, strange things had been happening there. Small tremors rattled the ground almost daily, not enough to destroy anything, but enough to make people uneasy. The scientists kept track of it all, and so did the locals, farmers, teachers, anyone really who paid attention to the earth. Then came the animals. Snakes everywhere were found frozen stiff. They had crawled out of the safety of their burrows only to die in the snow. Cows refused to stay in their barns. They wanted to be out in the open, no matter how cold it was. Dogs could be heard howling non-stop at night, and chickens wouldn't lay eggs. By February 3rd, the tremors grew stronger. Cracks appeared in the ice. Well water rose and fell without reason. Gas lines hissed under pressure. The signs were everywhere if they knew how to read them, which is exactly what the scientists were trying to do. State Seismological Bureau had already been studying the area and made a decision that no one had officially made before, and warned the public there was a serious problem. Through radio, loudspeakers and community meetings, people were told to leave their homes and stay outside. Schools and factories were evacuated. Families huddled together in courtyards, parks and open fields, just waiting. And then, at 7:36 p.m., the ground erupted. A 7.3 magnitude earthquake ripped through Haichang. Buildings folded, barns crumbled to the ground, and power lines snapped. But because of the evacuation, most of the city's residents were already outside. The death toll was still high, in the hundreds, but with a city of over 1 million people, the toll could have been catastrophic. For once, the warnings had been heard. Just over a year later, the lesson came with a darker twist. On July 28, 1976, 200 miles away, the city of Tangshan suffered a 7.8 earthquake. It hit at 3:42 a.m. when almost everyone was asleep. There had been no warnings this time, no evacuations of any sort. When the dust settled, Tangshan was literally gone. Officially, more than 240,000 people died. It was one of the deadliest earthquakes in modern history. The two events became linked forever. Haichang, the city that listened, and Tangshan, the one that never got the chance. The animals knew it from the start. They didn't need instructions, they just moved. Some even died trying to outrun what they felt was coming. Humans haven't lost that sense. We have just buried it under logic, distraction, and doubt. But once in a while, that instinct breaks through, and when it does, it's worth listening to. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.